By the early 1950s, the ever-increasing number of appliances and electric tools in the home, coupled with an explosion in ownership of both automobiles and television sets, combined with a push towards more prepackaged and ready-made meals, have the net result of creating a society with much more free time on their hands, and as a result, expanding waistlines. As a result, people began to feel the need to start exercising in an attempt to burn off those extra calories and become thinner. However, people in the 1950s were as likely to embrace fad and questionable exercise routines as we are today. This video explores the different exercise equipment and routines that were common in the 1950s. The hula hoop is an ancient invention and goes back at least as far as the ancient Greeks, who used hooping as a type of exercise. Throughout the centuries, hula hoops have been made from a variety of materials, including metal, bamboo, grasses, woods, and vines, among others. Hula hoops appear to have arrived in England somewhere in the early 1300s. In the early 1800s, British sailors ate. Within 6 months, they had sold 20 million hula hoops at $1.98 each. Japan once banned the hula hoop because the rotating hip action necessary to keep the hula hoop in motion seemed indecent. Although this may seem odd, it does come at the same time that Elvis could not be shown on television from the waist down. The hula hoop was considered an exercise device for the young and fit. The Washington Post, in an editorial from 1958, went so far as to warn persons of mature years of possible injury resulting in the use of hula hoops. The hula hoop was an exercise fad that swept the country by storm, but lasted less than a year. However, hula hoops will make a comeback in the 1960s. Roller skating goes back to at least 1743. Roller skates were first used in a London stage performance. Roller skate design was continually improved upon, and in 1898 the quad wheel roller skate was developed. This design of the quad skate has remained essentially unchanged since. In 1937, roller skating was organized nationally as a sport. It is considered that this is the beginning of the golden age of roller skating, which runs from 1937 to 1959. Recreational roller skating was normally done at roller skating rinks throughout the 1950s. There wasn't a lot of skating being done in residential areas at this time, although roller skating did branch out to car hops in the 1950s. Another extension of roller skating in the 1950s is the roller derby. Roller derby as a contact sport comes into existence in the mid-1930s. Roller derby was one of the first sports that was broadcast on television. Although there were both men's and women's leagues, there was a preference both to broadcast and watch women's matches. Roller derby was most popular in the early mid-1950s. For most people in the 1950s, roller derby was simply a spectator sport, as very few people had the desire to skate in a competitive contact sport. The 1950s saw an expansion in the use of home exercise equipment. Although this was not a new phenomenon, more people could afford to purchase this equipment. Items such as the belt shaker, exercise bikes, weight sets, and spring devices could be commonly found in many 1950s households in America. These devices ranged from well-made serious exercise equipment to items of dubious design and effect. Another exercise fad throughout the 1950s were exercises that were some combination of aerobics and calisthenics, but of varying degrees of effectiveness. These types of exercises were generally performed without any equipment or weights. However, in the 1950s, a woman still had to look her best, and as the pictures demonstrate, high heels were a must. Lastly, we have examples of exercise that more closely resembles torture devices. In post-war America, where a majority of homes now had electricity, and every town and city also had electricity, it was inevitable that people would develop exercise devices that used electrical current to contract muscles. These exercises ranged from electrified face masks that were said to tone the muscles of the face and neck to four-limb exercises that were touted as being able to work all the muscles in the arms and legs at once. These are quite possibly among the most questionable and dubious efforts in 1950s exercise routines. Looking back on the 1950s, people were no different then as opposed to today. Like them, we want to lose weight and be physically fit, but also like them, we're very interested in finding a shortcut or magic potion to allow us to achieve those aims without very much effort.